Hey everybody, last video was more of an unstructured rant, but today we're back in business. And we'll be talking about the same game, it's just that it's a separate controversy that is going on as well on top of the original one, which was about this character here, Amelie, that a bunch of soy boys and game journos like Paul Tassi got offended at for being just a cute blonde girl smiling that you can romance in a low fantasy action RPG instead of Daw. Who's Daw? But that's over there. It was the last video, feel free to check it out. The game is Knight's Path, by the way. I got a lot of comments asking, despite showing off the game and talking about it a bit towards the end of the last video. It's this one right here, feel free to check it out on Steam and give the developer some love on X because they've been getting attacked by deranged morons on social media for a few days now. Now today, we have another lady in the thumbnail. Some of you may recognize her. It's Stormfall, a Twitch streamer. You may have seen her before because much like Pirate Software, she has at some point dominated the YouTube Shorts section with clips from her streams. Fairly entertaining in short form, but stick around too long and you may just hear some of the stupidest shit capable of being produced by a human being. Believe me, I know, I got a PhD on this stuff too.
Knowledge.
So another batch of hot water that the studio got itself into was this post right here. Someone asked, I hope you'll have some LGBTQ representation in the game. And frankly, I don't even think this was a genuine comment, by the way. Like, just saying, this looks more like someone trolling than anything else, but regardless, the studio responded with, we care about gaming and fun, not modern agendas. This was not the first time either, by the way. The people had already asked the studio if there was going to be male options to romance, and they had already said no. It was a totally fair response, especially nowadays where there are games and entire studios and companies that advertise themselves by saying that they are all about diversity, inclusion and LGBTQ+ causes for social impact. I'll be getting into it deeper in a second, but just look at this. Like, it's common. Sony does it, Ubisoft does it, EA does it, Xbox does it, CD Projekt Red too, so on, so forth. And these are definitionally agendas, because they use their games to promote certain socio-political things that they believe are positive in the interest of social impact. Or at least they say it is, because they're positive, while cashing in on the SG grants.
My name is Piotr Nilubowicz, I'm a member of the board and CFO at CD Projekt. I would like to present our strategic approach to ESG issues in the context of our business. This approach reflects our identity and our values.
This is all online, you can look it up yourselves if the screenshots that I'm showing don't suffice. Fact is that yes, you can monetize corporate activism and ESG factors a lot into that. So it would make sense then for a studio making a game to also advertise itself saying that hey, we're not actually going to be doing any of this, we just want to make games, we're not worried about any agendas, just fun, just escapism, etc. This is natural, it is a filter that matters these days because using games for agendas has become so prevalent that you can actually stand out if you don't. It kinda takes me back to how CD Projekt Red once said that they just want to make great games and leave greed to others as a jab to companies like EA who were injecting predatory monetization methods into their games via crazy pre-order editions, loot boxes, cards. Like I remember Need for Speed Payback being a game where instead of taking your car to the garage and buy upgrades for it to kit it out, the vehicle upgrades were instead cards that you could earn or spend real money on. Shit was ridiculous and it was everywhere. 2K was doing it, Ubisoft was doing it, Activision was doing it, Warner Brother Games too, so on, so forth. And please remember that they were doing it under a noble guise too. Like they didn't admit that what they were doing was wrong and predatory, of course not. They pretended as if it was a good and positive thing, like cool stuff for the players, to maximize enjoyment and satisfaction. Remember, EA even called loot boxes surprise mechanics. So CD Projekt Red stepped out and said, hey, all this crap? Yeah, we're not doing it. We're gonna leave greed to other companies and just make good games packed with content released at a fair price. And then later on they went and launched a broken-ass game without letting people know that it was broken before launch. But hey, that's another story, and it's unrelated to what we're talking about here. So the point is, using games to promote social political values, beliefs, or agendas that the games industry personally finds to be positive became the norm. Whole consultant companies were born from this, almost like goddamn Somalian daycare centers. If you think Sweet Baby Inc. is the only one, you guys are mistaken. There were loads of them discovered in 2024, probably less of them now though after people took note. Their very function was to apply these agendas to narrative and design aspects of video games, especially if the studios themselves didn't know how to do it. Then there were the companies, making their own in-house methods. For example, I've shown you guys before this list of creative restrictions from Xbox Game Studios. Loads of nonsense on this list that exists solely to hinder creative freedom and promote these progressive agendas in society. The last point there is even one literally about diversity quotas. Some of the things on the list are more geared towards political correctness rather than anything else, but sadly it's all part of the same agenda at this point. This whole thing of having to be sensitive and aware, and if you're not, then you're a problem, or the content is problematic. Outside of this, there's also the GDC, the Game Developers Conference, where it has become like a tutoring center where activists that work in big studios from Sony, EA, Ubisoft, Xbox, 2K, etc. go and do presentations like these, teaching developers how to better apply their modern agendas to their games. And recently, just last year, a major gaming event, Gamescom, has even come out and openly embraced shoving politics into video games because they acknowledge how gaming can be an influential medium. So, okay, I just wanted to lay that out first. I know a lot of my own subscribers already know much of this. I mean, hey, informing the public is what I'm all about, but since there's always new people that may find my videos, I like to lay it all out again so we can get on the same page. And that same page is the solid, undisputed fact that modern agendas exist all over the upper echelon of gaming, the AAA space. And given the state of the games that they produce and the state of many of these companies as they sink in debt, it's also very easily arguable that these agendas suck donkey ass. They kill creativity, they kill attitude, and come up with next to nothing interesting. So again, as a studio, independent or not, it has become a very viable means of advertisement to say, whether explicitly or more subtly, that your game is fully dedicating itself to just being a fun video game built for that classic escapism that we used to have, rather than one of these modern games that are purpose-built to have some form of quote-unquote positive impact in society through social-political injections, aka agendas. So needless to say, this has gotten them a lot of hate from the usual suspects because they dare to be neutral. After all, some of the more extreme cases when it comes to progressive people, wokies if you will, they have made it more than clear that there is no neutrality to them. You're either with them or against them. Silence is violence is even a little cute term that they coined. So, while it may be valuable to advertise your game by separating yourself from these agendas that tend to impact dialogue writing, character design, storytelling, immersion, etc., it's something that is going to generate a lot of blind hatred online from whack jobs because these people have gotten so used to being catered and pandered to by every other company that by now, if something just chooses to not associate, they are immediately an enemy that is essentially posing a threat to their way of life. Realistically though, that's just delusional. Like, it's just a video game studio, an indie one on top of that, making a game without a gay romance option or a non-binary character. Like, calm down. It's not the end of the world. Expedition 33 didn't have any of those either, and as you can see, it didn't really need them. Sadly though guys, I'm sorry to break it to you, but Stormfall is one of those dumbasses who decided to join in and accuse the studio of that very same thing. Apparently, she believes neutrality doesn't exist. A game just being a game is unacceptable. You either shove LGBTQ representation into your game, regardless of setting, or you're participating in a modern agenda of your own just from the other side of the aisle while being actively homophobic. And with a strong following of over 30,000 people on X and a few extra 100,000 subscribers on other platforms like Twitch and YouTube, it was definitely one hell of a choice for her to not only blatantly lie about an indie studio, but also to do it in such a dumbass way where what she said doesn't even make any sense and is just provably wrong. It's like barging into an office at work saying that blue shirts are bad and yellow shirts are good, so everyone should wear yellow because it's really neat and represents what you find good in the world. And blue shirts represent all that you find bad, so no blue shirts allowed. But then you go and you flip out attacking someone coming to work wearing a green shirt just because they want to stay out of your bullshit t-shirt nonsense that you just made up. This is utterly delusional. Frankly, the evidence I just showed breaking this down in the intro and context section of this video should be enough to prove that already, but instead, as usual, I'm going to go deeper. Not because of her, she'll probably never even see this video, and even if she did, I wouldn't expect her to care because she knows she's being disingenuous. Truth doesn't really matter here. Not for her, but if I can at least speak it to some of you who may find this video, then that's a win on its own. So without further ado, let's just get in there. So the big thing here, from what I gathered while reading replies before stopping due to brain rot overload, is people believe that merely having a gay character to romance in a game is not automatically an agenda that is going to break it and make it not a fun experience. And as far as that goes, without further context, I agree as a concept. Where this whole thing crumbles is that you're not allowed to choose not to add it. If you choose not to include this, then you are automatically labeled homophobic like these people are doing here. Funny thing is, there's this other game called Ex Voto, which was also brought up in the past couple of days, where you play as this character right here, who looks either like a 13-year-old boy or the guy from Dumb and Dumber, but who's actually a female knight in medieval Italy. People with flags in their bios are circling around this game now and praising it, because the character is probably gay, with that other female character from the start of the trailer who is voiced by Jennifer English. Again, it's also been promoted by games media like IGN. Ex Voto even took the modern agendas thing from the Knight's Path situation to throw a jab at them, proudly standing with such agendas in gaming alongside the modern audience, and so the modern audience is praising it merely because it stands as a total opposition of Knight's Path. Instead of a pretty blonde girl, you got whatever the fuck this is, and instead of no LGBTQ representation in low medieval fantasy, you got lesbian knights in medieval Italy. And none of these people are complaining about it with the same bullshit about realism or additional player options. Isn't it funny how it's always rules for thee but not for me? I've said it before and I will say it again, the values that they often use against you or indie developers or studios or companies in the games industry are always false. They don't exist. They don't actually have them nor apply them. They just LARP as if they do in order to get people to bend over for them. But anyway, that's a side note. Let's get back to clear thinking and even good faith interpretation. I'm giving it all here. Good faith to Zambro, buy one, get one free with your order of tortellini, alright? The fact is that we can go back and think of great RPGs in the past that had male and female romance options. People always bring up the Mass Effect trilogy and old Dragon Age games, especially Origins, as examples, but frankly, there's so many more of them because at one point, this was normal and not indicative of any agenda. It's just normal RPGs where you can pick to play as a man or a woman, generally also pick whether to be good or bad, and also pick whoever you wanted to romance. In many games, the romanceable characters didn't even have a preference. They were just romanceable by the player regardless. Hell, in Skyrim you can play as a lizard man and get married to Isolde, a strong, independent and racist Nord woman who threatened an orc that she would get him deported if he didn't go and steal sleeping tree sap from a giant's camp. Or something like that. I mean, I don't know, guys, I haven't played the game in years. Anyway, jokes aside, I never had any issues with this, and I still don't. But we also have to remember how much the times and the rhetoric has changed since then and until now. Like back then, all of this was just normal stuff. There wasn't even any prominent talk of representation. But then, at some point, like maybe around 2016 or whatever, this word began taking over gaming discourse, and over the last 5 or so years, give or take, it has become one of the most obnoxious terms on the goddamn planet. And also one of the most divisive and contested ones, because if you don't like it, or if you just anything at all, it doesn't even matter, any little bit of resistance or any little bit of questions that go, hey, what if we do this instead, or how do we do this without breaking that, or hey, what about immersion, it doesn't matter, you will get straight up demonized. Again, the with us or against us extremism mentality where if you merely say that video games should not be made with representation in mind, then you are immediately nuked by these people. They will pretend like what you said was homophobic when in reality you didn't even mention any goddamn thing that was homophobic. There's people who are gay and bisexual who are against this kind of thing. Like, this whole homophobic copium is absolute bullshit. It's just a tool. It's just yet another weapon in their little toolbox, or their weapon box, their weapon wheel, whatever. It's an RPG, so it's in their weapon inventory. That's why the studio got attacked. Someone asked if there would be LGBTQ representation, which means far more than just the mere presence of a gay character, and because the studio said they're not interested in modern agendas, they're being called homophobic for it. There's one point that I will give some of these people, a very small point. It's that the studio will eventually need either more tact or a PR guy, though they're very small and independent so far, so I understand that they don't have that. And it's not even because what they said is wrong, because it's not. There's zero problem with what they said. There is zero problem whatsoever with not wanting to include certain things in your video game. You are free to make the creative decisions that you want to make. It's more a problem with the way that they said it. If you say things differently, you will save yourself a lot of controversy online. At the end of the day, studios like these need to understand that these people that are attacking them right now, and even the games media, are always out on the lookout for anything that they can use against you. They are deranged, malicious assholes, and so while it's useless for you to cater to them or engage in debate with them because they don't, that they don't operate on reason, what is useful is to have more tact so that they have less ammunition to use against you. That's it as far as the studio goes. Now let's get back to the point. Optional gay romances in the past were just a thing in a video game. Random, well-written characters that happened to be gay were also just a thing in a video game. There was no additional weight and intention with them. And if there was, it was woven so well by actual writers that it never posed as a problem to the players. It never posed as preaching, it never posed as lecturing or as virtue signaling or any of these other heavy-handed, nonsensical, intrusive things that game developers these days, who really aren't game developers in my opinion, they're just activists, do. Now these types of characters are meant to be statements, they're meant to be representation of people and values that have long since crossed into very divisive political bullshit. For example, I talked a bit more deeply about this in my video response to the Act Man, so I won't dive into it too much. The link will be in the description and top comment if you're interested in an even deeper dive into these matters. But the LGBTQ's inability to separate itself from extremists has made it so that now this acronym and their flag are representative of very divisive things that most people just don't agree with, involving privacy and safety in female spaces, competition in female sports, general self-ID laws which touch on these two things, plus other ones like male inmates in female prisons, and of course the big one, child transitioning. But Des, what the hell does any of this have to do with gay characters or romance options? The funny thing is that was never the statement they replied to. The statement was, again, I hope you'll have some LGBTQ representation in the game. Whenever someone asked if there was going to be a male romance option, they just simply said no. This response was to a different question, LGBTQ representation. Gay characters or gay romances are just one thing. It's like 3 letters of that whole acronym. It's just the LGB. The TQ are whole entirely different things. It's gender stuff like trans characters or non-binary ideology. And here's the thing guys, I'll be real with you, depending on how it's applied, like if it wasn't forced on the player and it was just an option that is presented naturally, I wouldn't care. I'd just ignore it the same way that I ignore Kaidan in Mass Effect 1 every damn time as I walk by the galaxy map and straight into Liara's room to get me some of that Asari ass. But anyway, trans characters or non-binary ones would 100% take me out on the other hand. Like, I'm sorry, but that shit just immediately breaks immersion in settings like these. Even if it was a much looser and higher fantasy setting like Dragon Age, it still breaks immersion because you know why it's there. You know why the developers went out of their way to add surgery scars, even though in the lore it makes no goddamn sense for people to transition with modern day human medicine. Like, what are you doing? They have goddamn magic and rituals. Also, you could just not include this in the game at all and focus on the lore and history. Why are we doing this? I don't want it, I'm not buying it. You want to make it, keep making it, but I sure as fuck am not going to support it. And if I happen to be in the privileged position that I am, where I'm making content for people, you know, my channel is small, but still, if I'm in that position, I'm going to make content on it, I'm going to inform people, because at the same time, they like to hide these things. It's not just that you can't criticize it, it's that they like to hide it, because they know that what they're doing is bullshit, so they want to keep it hidden. They know that what they're doing is unpopular, things that people don't buy into, shit that's just not compelling. And so when people find out, they complain about it, and then the games take a fucking hit. And then what happens? Sweet Baby Inc., for example, keeps working on these games, but hides the information, hides themselves from credit so that they don't show up, and stop announcing whenever they're working on a new game from another big studio. You know, they stopped putting whatever games they're working on their website now. So it's not even an honest thing. It's not even like, hey, yeah, we're doing this, here it is, and here you go. No, they know that they can't do that, and they know why. Like, it's one thing if these developers are making their own games with this kind of content, you know, their own IPs, it's whatever. Like, there's a bunch of indie games that don't interest me. You know, they are niche games. They're games that some people create, they like it, it's their taste, it has the stuff that they want. It doesn't fit me, though, so I don't play them. But in the AAA side of things, it's very different, because they take franchises that used to be a certain way, that used to present characters a certain way, or that gameplay used to be a certain way. Like, take Saints Row, for example. Saints Row used to be fantastic, but then the activists got their hands on it and they turned it into a fucking soy fest. That was Saints Row 2022. Dragon Age also used to be fantastic. Veilguard was a goddamn clown show. This is why it's wrong, and this is why it's bullshit. It's one thing to make your own game and either have it flop on its own, or maybe even succeed by having a smaller budget. It's another thing to hijack major IPs and change them from the inside, citing bullshit demographic notes like these. I'm not going to get into this in this video, otherwise this video is going to be gigantic. We're not going to get into fucking bullshit demographics that they got, but that they use, and if you deny it, if you say no, this is not real, or if you disagree with it, then you're a bigot. Sorry, I'm going in a bit of a rant here. Like, I went off the highway basically. You know, I won't leave you hanging on the demographics thing. I'll just give you a very small, short example of what I mean. According to the games industry, let me just pull up my notes here. I found it, boys. It wasn't easy, but I found it. I knew I had this shit. I used it before, but sometimes, you know, you forget. So according to the ESA, very official, video game players are almost split right down the middle. 50-50, almost, you know, 48% female, 51% male, and 1% non-binary, you know, or they preferred not to say. Also, according to them, the average age of the video game players are 41. And now for the best part. Most of you watching this video right now, most of us motherfuckers playing video games are playing them on mobile. That's right, we're playing phone games, we're not playing actual video, no, we're playing mobile games, okay? So that's the information from the ESA. This is the type of shit that then gets taken by disingenuous game journalists and spun into false narratives that say that, for example, oh hey, by the way fellas, so 50% of people who play video games are women, so next time that you're making an action game, make sure to keep that in mind and cater to the women out there, because of course, you know, the force is female and all that nonsense. Meanwhile, we all know that that's not true. Anyone with a modicum of self-awareness and common sense understands that most people playing action games are dudes, and they also understand that if you're going to make decisions for the games industry, the actual games industry, this one right here, with the AAA studios making video games that people are supposed to buy, you know, $80, $70, $60 video games, then you're not going to take into account iPad moms and grandmothers out there who have Candy Crush installed on their phone and count towards these fucking data polls. And so that, fellas, is what I meant by game journalists, consultants, activists, etc. using fake-ass demographic data to justify and push their agendas further in the industry. But anyway, this was a whole-ass rant. We already detached way too much from the topic, so let's get back to it. If I remember right, we were talking about Veilguard and the use of very specific modern contemporary issues in video games. Maybe if they had focused on the history and lore of Dragon Age, the game wouldn't have been so bad. Like, you don't have to put gender dysphoria as a modern issue with very local political roots tied to all manner of super divisive things in your fantasy RPG, especially in the lamest and most contemporary way possible, where your character sits down at a dinner table and drops the term non-binary as if she was in a Starbucks cafe in downtown LA, or generally talking about it in this incredibly cucked way as if it was the most important issue plaguing your crew's minds, even though the world was ending thanks to two evil tyrannical gods who were dooming whole regions to the blight and recruiting dragons. But anyway, let's recap and move on to the next angle. So we've established that LGBTQ representation is not just a simple gay character to romance in a video game. TQ implies much more, which would immediately be obvious modern socio-political agenda content that frankly sucks. It breaks immersion and is just deeply uninteresting for games like these. If you got dragons flying around, nobody cares about your little whatever issue that you've got with your gender, okay? It's just common sense, I'm sorry. Let's talk about how the very concept of representation makes even the pressure of a regular gay character already be a huge issue. Because this is actually the big one for me that justifies their answer. It's the use of that word, representation, and what it means nowadays in our culture, how obnoxious and restrictive it can be, and what the industry does to achieve it. And for that, we're going to bring up two examples, so let's get into it. When people talk about representation, in my view, it's immediately indicative of an agenda. This is actually something that got a lot of people mad at me responding, because in their mind, no it's not. For them, representation is just normal, like a regular gay character in a game is both normal and LGBTQ representation, and I firmly believe that it's not. It's not that I disagree that having a gay character in a game is immediately an agenda, that's not the point at all. Representation, though, is something completely different. And I don't hold any grudges or hate towards any people trying to argue this out. The truth is that some people like that might even be good faith about this whole thing, but there's one thing that they should have been doing with us for a long time, and that is calling out the extremism on that side. Because the reason why representation is indicative of an agenda is what the industry has done to classify as representation while pushing for it, and how activists and game journalists don't even prop up and celebrate characters that are gay but don't push any agendas. Characters that they don't see as enough to be considered representation. And so factually creating this line that separates regular, well-written gay characters from characters that do representation. I don't make the rules, I just observe them. Characters like Dion in Final Fantasy XVI are an example of this. This is a character that reminds me of many in the good old days, where they were just presented realistically, where the character is still a character with its own personality, goals, mission, values, etc., and then the sexual orientation is just something that is besides that. It's something that really doesn't matter all that much. It's surface level nonsense. It's just a thing off on the side. Sometimes it didn't even matter what the orientation was. Many characters were just made in video games without romance, and that never came up, and nobody cared if they were gay, straight, or bi. Now there's an obsession with wanting them to be one thing or the other and have it expressed outwardly in order for people to tally that shit up on a board. Like there's people out there who legitimately only play a game if the characters are explicitly queer in one way or another, either by being gay or by being trans or non-binary like Tosh. And I find that hilarious because it never mattered to us. Like we'd play something like, I don't know, Dying Light or Dead Space or some Tom Clancy games or Spec Ops, etc. We didn't care about the character's sexual orientation because it didn't matter. Now it's pushed into gaming. If it's not explicitly gay, then they will say that it's explicitly straight, and that's a problem because representation. These agendas do exist, and because there's people out there who don't play video games to just play video games for the sake of having fun, and instead do it for personal validation and narcissism, This representation is demanded, and how do you achieve this representation? Well, by making it abundantly clear what a character is. And now, even that hasn't been enough in the past few years, as we've seen presentations done at GDC like this one, where they are, quite literally, all about how the representation they've gotten so far is actually not enough. They see it as just checkbox shit from companies to keep them quiet rather than actually serious efforts to represent them accurately and with whatever good intentions they perceive. Quote, "We have seen an increase in sincere queer representation in games in the last few years where it once used to be absent. However, this representation in mainstream media has been by and far centered in romantic relationships, ignoring the many facets of queerness that make up the day-to-day of LGBTQ+ people. Queerness impacts all axes of our lives, and players should be able to see this prism of experiences represented outside of relationships. Join these retards, one of which is the racist developer who came out publicly stating that she doesn't want white people working in her studio, and then instead of suffering the consequences of that action, was actually hired by EA to work on the Black Panther game, so she actually got a promotion for being racist, but whatever."
I have a team of 21 right now for Validate. It's a pretty big team. It's a crazy big team for indie games. But who is your team? Validate has a team of mostly all people of color. We have no white people on our team. I did that because I wanted to create a safe environment. And I know the best way for an environment to be safe is to be around people who are just like me. And I'm not saying that white people in the industry are creating unsafe environments. I'm not saying that. That is not what I'm saying. I am saying that sometimes it is hard to work with white people because they think that something may be okay, but it was really a microaggression. And no one wants to deal with that while they're trying to make a game that they love.
As they analyze the many ways queerness can be explored beyond romance. Takeaway: attendees will learn about the many ways to experience queer narratives that sit beyond the exclusively romantic conception. Queerness is an umbrella of identities, and their stories deserve to be recognized too. Intended audience: writers and creators who want to diversify storylines they create for queer characters, and players who wish to expand their resources for identifying queer topics. I got more of these, by the way. Like, there's a whole bunch of these things that these people go and present at venues like the GDC or employ in their consultant work for the games industry. And this is clearly not just the mere presence of a gay character, it's much more. So, would Stormfall or any other morons like to argue the fact that this isn't a deeply intrusive agenda that alters the very content that people make? And how is it an agenda if I, as the creator of a video game, prefer to present a character like Dion in my game instead of whatever the fuck this is, where I have to twist and mangle my gay characters to be cringe? Realistically, this could all be so easy, just like it was years ago with the diversity that already existed in the games industry. But it's shit like this that has made it all so difficult, so toxic, so pervasive, so obnoxious, and now, sadly, so intolerable. This is why Dion is not raised in celebration as an example of LGBTQ representation by these groups. It's because they don't accept it as such. Dion is literally one of the best modern examples of diverse characters done right, and they disown him because externally, they don't see a queer character. They just see a normal man in a Final Fantasy story. A warrior prince standing up for his people, waging war against an invading nation, honorable and loyal to his empire, willing to sacrifice everything for the good of the world, and dealing with an insurmountable amount of heavy shit, such as seeing his empire being poisoned and usurped from inside through a goddamn demon that hides itself in plain sight. A demon that his father is too blind to see and none of these royals have the balls to speak up against. This shit is a proper compelling character with a story, who, again, happens happens to be gay. It's not his personality, it's not what he's worried about, because realistically, he has so much more to fucking worry about. And that ruins it for the purposes of representation. Because in the minds of these activists, he has to, I don't know, I literally have no idea, like whatever that whole barrage of bullshit was about queerness impacting all X's of our lives, and players should be able to see this prism of experiences represented. This is why this doesn't work. This is why their characters suck. This is why they're poorly fucking written. Because this notion of sexual, whatever they're supposed to represent, right? It depends on the character. That needs to be the top priority. That needs to be the entire personality and the entire goddamn storyline of the character. And everything else takes a backseat. The more cringe the character, the better, so that they can pin their figurative and sometimes literal flags on it and be like, this is our franchise now. This is our character. This is now representative of our lifestyles and politics. And anything else that even slightly deviates from that, by not including it, gets shafted and hit with the homophobic label. Or any of the other labels, like there's many of them. Black Myth Wukong got hit with it because it didn't inject diversity and representations into mythological China. Lords of the Fallen 2 is being hit with it for removing the body type selector and making attractive female characters. Knight's Path is being hit with it for having a pretty girl and also not injecting representation into their game. Some individual developers got hit with the same thing too, like Thomas Mahler, the director of Ori and the Blind Forest, and Notch, the creator of Minecraft, the creator of Five Nights at Freddy's as well, Scott Cawthorne, for just being right-wing. One of the creators of D&D who gets told by progressives that he doesn't understand what D&D is about anyway. The first Kingdom Come Deliverance also got hit with it too, for the same reasons of not injecting representation stuff into medieval Europe. And then for the sequel, the director got scared that it would happen again, so he made the changes and hired consultants. So on and so forth, fellas, the list goes on, we'd be here all day. It's true, by the way, it's on an interview he did in his country back during spring. I covered it in this video if you're interested, I'll leave a link in the top comment and the description. There ain't no time to be diving into that now, but that's what he said. He feared the proverbial sword of Damocles of once again getting targeted by the same games media that targeted him in 2018 for merely wanting to present a realistic medieval setting. You see, if you try to make a game without any agenda stuff, or express centrist or god forbid right-wing views on your profile or whatever, it's over for you in this industry. You get targeted. That's where things get even worse and more annoying. Like sometimes, people might see me advocating against certain things passionately online and they don't understand it. And then in their minds, it's like, oh, who cares even if they did the representation thing? It'd just be like a gay character or whatever. Like chill, why defend studios saying that they don't want to add it?
Who gives a shit?
But that's because they lacked context and history. Long context and history that dates back years now of this obnoxious, oppressive, disgusting, one-sided agenda that hinders people from creating what they want and forces them to bend over to activists' values and politics. And if they don't, bam! In comes the sword of Damocles crashing down on their heads. Now, one last angle to wrap this all up in a pretty bow. So, since there's a lot being brought up and I already went on like 3 different tangents, let's do a quick recap to see where we're at. So number 1, the implication of LGBTQ immediately makes it immersion breaking and blatantly indicative of a modern agenda, because we're dealing with contemporary political nonsense. Number 2, the very concept of representation has become obsessively broken in nature, so the inclusion or even implication of a character that is gay wouldn't be enough. It'd be seen as a cheap workaround and not actual representation, which again, is what the statement mentioned. Now let's cover number 3, which is mostly down to, what if you just don't want to? I saw loads of comments yesterday while browsing, or before yesterday depending on when this video gets uploaded. Lots of hate comments, lots of ridiculous notions, some of them were shit like this. Thinks LGBT+ aren't realistic in a medieval setting but includes dragons and snails the size of dogs. LMAO? And this is just stupid. Like, the developer said they care about gaming and fun, not modern agendas. They didn't say that they cared about realism and historical accuracy. A lot of people argued the realism route for both the pretty girl character that they showed, which I covered in the last video, but also for this, the gay situation. Because, actually, gay people existed in medieval Europe. It's like, okay, so what? Why does it need to be in the game? Also, why do people always go for the gay people thing? It's so funny to me how they settle for the most acceptable and normal aspect of LGBTQ representation when in reality, it's the least desired one from unhinged fucktards online who obsess over this game activism thing. Again, never forget Dion's character and how they don't even regard it as representation. But anyway, that aside, another angle people use is stuff like, wow, is it such a big deal if a game has a gay character or gay romance? And the truth is that no, usually it's not a big deal. Again, it depends on how it's applied. If you're talking about Veilguard, you fucked up. If you're talking about Final Fantasy, you did a good job. But regardless of that, it shouldn't be a big deal either if a studio decides to not include it. But sadly, we just don't see that. It's such a gigantic issue for them that it causes a monumental crash out online, and it was enough to get them to call Knight's Path a homophobic chud game. Or in the case of people like Stormfall, call it a game that has its own agenda. Don't they even realize how hurtful that is for their own causes? How much worse they look when they do this? Like, it doesn't even look good for the woke, progressive, modern agenda movement if a game that is self-identifying as just a game, focused on creating a fun experience devoid of agendas, is what they consider a chud game. It's like, oh, a desirable game, a game fit for escapism rather than preaching, a game that represents most of the people who actually play video games? That's what right-wing is? Oh, shit, well, okay then, I guess I'm right-wing. Like, what the fuck are you doing? What strategy is this? The kamikaze strategy? At the end of the day, the main takeaway from this story needs to be this. A game should not be forced to include LGBTQ representation obligatorily. It shouldn't be a requirement for anyone's metrics, and not doing it out of interest to remain strictly neutral or focused on making a setting fit for pure escapism, or simply a setting that does not want to include it. Expedition 33 didn't fucking include it either. What is going on here? I feel like I'm on Clown World right now. What? I don't even I lose track of what the fuck I'm saying. You shouldn't. It's just so simple and so basic that wording it makes me feel retarded. That's the problem. It obviously shouldn't be a requirement for anyone, and not doing it for whatever reason you may have should not get the developers labeled with the chud homophobic tag. It's as simple as that. Like, here's the deal. I'll be fair with you guys, okay? If you want to go and call Andy Pant's game or Jorge Torch's game as a chud game, then go ahead. Hell, they self-identify their games as that. They make no secret of it, because the game actively makes fun of shit like that. It's like the reverse agenda, where instead of making games dedicated to promote progressiveness and far leftist stuff, it's games that dedicate themselves to mock it. But a goddamn low fantasy RPG? For merely not including a male playable character and not forcing LGBTQ representation? What are you, fucking stupid? One last time to this chick who decided it'd be a great idea to take her 30,000 plus followers on Twitter, plus however many hundreds of thousands she has on Twitch and YouTube, and misrepresent an indie studio. No. The absence of a modern agenda is not an agenda. You can't entitledly force everyone to pander to you, and then if they choose merely to not do so, call it an opposite action rather than neutrality or a mere different creative direction. I don't know how hard it is to understand, but it is what it is. Again, take the t-shirt analogy from earlier in the video if this is too complicated for you. You know, it's ironic how she posted this with a gif of Patrick looking retarded when what she said made no goddamn sense whatsoever. But either way, I am cutting it here, guys. This video is already way too long. If you made it this far, thank you very much for watching. Drop a like if you enjoyed the video, dislike it if you didn't. Let me know your thoughts, subscribe if you're new, you know, all of that YouTuber stuff.
Let's up those numbers!
And have a good weekend out there. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.